So we'll keep it real simple off the top. I'm always interested in kind of learning about how everyone started swimming. So if I asked you to kind of take me back to when swimming was introduced to you, the sport, not just like,
Right.
dropping in and not drowning, but the actual sport of swimming, when was it introduced to you and where were you at that time?
Yeah, I started really young. I lived in a neighborhood of Flint, um, and it was sort of, I think I was probably 4, and I had an older sister. And, I think we'd moved to the neighborhood not that long ago, and basically it was summer, and every kid got on their bike and was riding down the street with a towel around their neck. And it's like, oh, where's everyone going? And that was it. There was a pool down at the end of the street and a local summer club. And I think I started that season. I think I started when I was 4, because that's what you did. Because if you didn't do that, you didn't do anything. So um, that was pretty much my start of swimming, and probably that was probably my only swimming experience till I was probably 6 or 7. But yeah, by the time I was 7, I'd been swimming for 3 years. So it it was my thing pretty early.
For sure. Was that a competitive beginning for you at 6 or 7 when you
Yeah.
said that was the next time?
Oh
So
yeah.
when you started swimming, who was that with? Who was your club at that time?
It wasn't even a USS club, so it was just a summer club. They just
Mhm.
swam in the summers. I think it was called Ottawa Hills. Um, and it was one of those clubs where, like, even as an 18-year-old, I think they might have had to do 50s, but definitely the longest race was like 100 IM. It was one of those summer club programs where they would do relays. I was kind of remembering this, where it was a combined age group relay. So it was something like your entire relay had to add up to like 64 years old. And so by the time I continued in these summer clubs, even once I started like real swimming, but I remember being like 8, because it'd be awesome because I'd be 8 and then they could add a bunch of 18-year-olds to the team. And it was basically high school kids. It was a lot of fun, but it was just totally casual rec swimming, which I don't know that they have that. That's a thing in Michigan. I know they have it in because I later moved to the Bloomfield Hills area, obviously, where I went to high school, and they had their own summer swim program. And I don't know that I've ever, like, I live in California, I don't know I've ever heard of it out here or seen it elsewhere, but it's definitely a Michigan thing.
For sure. I mean, the club scene in Ann Arbor, I mean, it's basically the same clubs that have been swimming against each other for 40, 50
Right.
years. And to this day, the best kids, like all Americans, are swimming for like Barton Hills Country Club on,
Right, right, right.
just to be able to participate at the championship meet at the end. But yeah, it's a kind of a culture. Um, can you remember maybe a breakthrough or a time where you started to realize, maybe around this time or maybe it was later, but a breakthrough for you where you really started to realize I'm good at this?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think. I took to it pretty quickly. I was obviously little, so I was just 4. But I can't remember. I think probably my first recollection of, like, hey, I want to do this really well and be good at it was, I think, like most competitive people, you don't really, you're usually not very pleased with winning, but you really don't like losing. Um, and so you're not really pleased even with hitting your goals. You're just more disappointed in not hitting them. And so I remember being little, and it was like the summer championships. I don't know, I was probably 5, and I got a ribbon. Like I made it to whatever place got ribbons, but it was black. It was a black ribbon, and like I think the winner's place was probably blue, and then it like white and red or whatever it was. I'm like, black. This sucks. I don't ever want to get that again. And so probably from that point forward, I'm sure the next year I probably came back and was one or was top 3 or something like that. So um, probably by the time I was 6, I was definitely good at swimming, and I was definitely like sort of beating the 8-year-olds and stuff like that. And yeah, by the time I was 8, I was swimming 10 and under. So I got good pretty early, and took it competitively from a pretty early age. I don't remember at what age I joined a proper club program. I think it was still just like my local YMCA, but I was still pretty young. So.
Yeah. When you tell me about, when does the transition happen from Flint down to, obviously I knew you in the Bloomfield area. Is that the only move that happened there?
No, I'm trying to think. So when I was so we lived in two neighborhoods in Flint. And I remember that being a big scandal because I moved summer club programs, and it was like it was like a local summer club program. So it was the first time I'd ever been like, I moved to the rival team basically because my parents moved houses. But we moved out of Michigan entirely. I lived in LA for like 3 years when I was in basically middle school, late elementary school through middle school. And so I was definitely, and I think, so I'm trying to go through this. So I think what I did is I started swimming at a local YMCA in Flint. And when it sort of became clear that it wasn't a great swim program, even while I was living in Flint, then I started training with a club program in Bloomfield Hills, which is the club program I stayed with even through high school when I moved back to Michigan. And so at that point, I was pretty into swimming. I'm sure I was at that point winning or near the top in state championships and stuff like that. But I remember moving to Southern California and again joining the local YMCA team and showing up at a local YMCA meet and just thinking, oh, this is going to be like nothing. And I just got smoked by some guys, and I'm like, oh, Southern California is not Michigan when it comes to swimming. So I swam in SoCal until like 7th, 8th grade. When I moved back, that's when I moved back to Bloomfield Hills. My family moved back to Michigan, and I stayed there and went to high school there through the end of my, through the end of my high school.
Was that following your parents' work, or what created those moves?
Yeah, it's not nearly as dramatic as you'd like to think. It was just my dad got different jobs. The only, not drama, but the only time that we put a fork in it is I think probably in my junior year of high school, or going into my junior year, my dad got an opportunity to do a job in St. Louis, to move to St. Louis. He was just an executive for an optical company. It wasn't anything exciting. It wasn't like he's an army dude or anything like that. It was just regional vice president of something or other. And we really liked Michigan. We really liked the high school, Andover, and Mike Lane as a coach in particular, and decided, yeah, you go ahead, Dad. You can go to St. Louis, but Mom and Eric are going to stay here, and we're going to finish up high school in Michigan. So it was definitely my senior year and probably part of my junior year that he sort of lived and worked in St. Louis and came back, weekends and vice versa and stuff like that. So it was one of those investments they made to sort of see through my swimming career through the end of high school.
Because of that swimming scene in California, and I don't think there's any secrets that the Southern California swimming scene is probably the best age group swimming there is in the country. And you're obviously taking swimming very seriously at that point, as you described. Did you have any apprehension? I mean, obviously I understand you got to go with your parents, but how did you feel about that move and kind of being extracted out of Southern California at that time?
I didn't have any clue. We didn't have obviously the internet or anything, so we didn't know. You just kind of got in the pool and kept going. I loved it. I live in LA now, so I'm glad for it. But yeah, I didn't have any idea, but it was definitely, I think ultimately it was good for me because I don't think I ever won anything during my stretch there. I was always getting third or fourth, and some of those kids turned out to be some pretty good swimmers. But it was good. It was competitive. It was fun. It was definitely a different scene than Michigan. But no, I didn't know what I was getting in for. And then I got there, I was like, holy smokes, it's a different world.
Sure. So is your first year back 8th grade, or is it 9th grade?
I think it was 8th. Yeah, 8th grade. Yeah.
Sure. So, and obviously you get back with BBA at that time and kind of get back into, where you had been. Can you tell me about, maybe not the first time you met Mike Lane? I know that's probably tough to pin down and remember, but do you remember some of your early impressions of him and kind of him as a character?
I was terrified of him. I was terrified of of going to high school. Actually, you know what? He was our middle school coach. Now I think about this. So we had a middle school team, and we didn't train with them. We just showed up for swim meets, and it was, I mean, it obviously couldn't have been less sort of, intense. But I just, when you're 13 and you're pretty good at something, and you're sort of the big fish in the pool, like at your club program. I mean, I was a cocky little jerk, at least at practices. But man, those middle school meets, I was so scared of him. And my freshman year of high school, I was just like so terrified. I wasn't going to say it. I remember my first high school practice, and like, I think we had a 6-lane pool or whatever it is, but we get in for our first practice, and I'm getting in like lane 2. I'm not, lane 6 for the fast guys. Like, I'm getting in lane 2. I'm just scared of, of everything. It took a while, but obviously he became probably the most important coach I had in my career. But yeah, I was terrified of him. I'd heard stories, so he wasn't going to put up with much.
That's quite a statement. He was the most important coach of my career. Tell me why he was so important.
I don't know. I mean, I think part of it was I had sort of unyielding confidence in him. Not that I ever really questioned a coach, but I had just seen what he'd done with other swimmers, just seen how they performed relative to. It didn't matter if there was the bad, not a great swimmer, or one of the elite guys on the team. Didn't matter what year it was. Every single one of them, whatever their last meet was of the year, really just performed. And I'd say he did things differently than any coach I'd had before. Just the way he structured his workouts, and especially the way he tapered for championships, it was just so different from anywhere I'd been before. And you saw the results. And so it was just that, like, I had whatever he said, I did it. As hard as I could do it, I would do it. And I always worked hard, but there was just something about him where you just had the utmost confidence that he was going to get you ready, and you just didn't question it. So I definitely found, like, when I transitioned to college, I never had that same degree of confidence, especially when it came to tapering. And I definitely think that affected me. Like, you sort of got in that rhythm where you're like, this is nothing like what I did before, and I know what I did worked. And I struggled mentally with that transition in college, being like, yeah, this isn't how we did it. This isn't how I need to do it. But I didn't have the same, even though I had good relationships with my coaches in college, it wasn't the same thing where it was that opportunity to have that feedback. And so, yeah, I never had the same sort of drops, at NC2As that relative to the regular season that I had been used to. And there's a lot of reasons behind that, but part of it was just, I felt like I didn't have that same, I'm just going to put whatever you say, I'm going to trust you, we're going to go with it, and I know it's going to pan out in the end. So yeah, he was incredible at getting people ready to swim. In particular, ready to swim at that last meet. Swimming's such a weird sport.
For sure.
And that you put all your eggs in your basket, right, for one event or one meet. That's sort of a weird mental concept. So
it's one of the things that certainly makes swimming. There's lots of things that make swimming unique, but baseball player, a basketball player, a football player, they honestly could have their best game of the year in the first game, right? Yeah. Or the second game. It doesn't matter. Yeah. It could happen on any day, and we don't have that luxury.
Having said that, my son is a baseball player, and it drives me bananas because, like, swimming was so easy. If I wanted to know if I'm good, throw my time down on paper, see what you go, and we know. But like this, like, subjective, who knows who's good, and it's driving me crazy as a parent. So it's, I'm pretty laid back about it, but it's just so different. It's just such a different framework than what I'm used to.